Kelsey. This is my channel, The Fancy Hat Lady Reads. I am wearing one of my fancy booktube hats, and today I'm bringing you a little video that is going to be separate from my next haul video, which I have a combined book haul for April and May that I still have to film. But this is a separate book haul just for books and other bookish things that I acquired this week at BookExpo. So I was actually at BookExpo and BookCon these past few days as a volunteer with Housing Works. Housing Works is the official charity partner of BookExpo and BookCon, and I've been volunteering at the Housing Works bookstore for a little over 2 years now. Housing Works is an organization that fights homelessness and AIDS in New York City, and the bookstore is part of that organization, as well as several thrift stores throughout the city. We're a primarily used bookstore, but there are instances where we get donations of things directly from publishers, and that's sort of what we're doing at BookExpo and BookCon. In addition to operating our own booth, we're talking to all of the other exhibitors and soliciting donations of any stock they might have left over at the end of the event. And then at the end of it all, we pack up everything that the other booths are leaving for us and we ship it back to our store. So I had 3 volunteer shifts over BookExpo and BookCon. I was volunteering on Thursday of BookExpo, I was volunteering on Saturday of BookCon, and I was volunteering last night, Sunday of BookCon, for packing everything up. So I am sore right now from carrying boxes of books around Javits Center as people were like rolling up carpets and disassembling booths, as like forklifts and cherry picker machines are everywhere just taking everything apart. That's what I was doing last night. But basically all that to say, in case you were wondering, I was at BookExpo with an exhibitor badge in that capacity, not necessarily as a booktuber. So my point here is basically that while I was at BookExpo, I wasn't doing it like full-time like other people who go to BookExpo necessarily do, because I was working part of it and then I was still trying to, you know, do my normal life because I wasn't traveling to New York for this. I live here. But I still had time to do the BookExpo thing on Thursday and Friday afternoons. And I was mostly doing that with my friend Roya from Unicorn Hunter Books. I will link her channel below. She was in town for BookExpo, and this was the first time I'd met her in person. She was previously an internet-only friend. And so Wednesday, I took her touristing a bit in New York. We ended up seeing Shakespeare in the Park. It was Othello. And then when I had time on Thursday and Friday afternoons, we were doing BookExpo stuff, sometimes together and sometimes splitting up when there were different things we wanted to see and do. And then come BookCon, I was exhausted, and I took a look at how crazy BookCon was and was like, I'm not doing this, I'm going home and getting some sleep. So I did not do BookCon at all as an attendee, I just worked my volunteer shifts. So I came away from BookExpo with 8 books, which is more than I thought I was gonna be able to come away with, given that I was only sort of doing BookExpo part-time. I was pretty selective. These are all things I had pre-existing interest in. I wasn't really picking up any books just for the heck of it because they were there. There is one thing here, one book that is rather off-brand for my channel, but was nevertheless sort of my highlight of my BookExpo. So I'm going to start there, and then I'm going to move on to all of the other books that are more what you normally see here. But on Friday, there was a book signing with Jan Brett, who is a children's picture book author and illustrator. This is her newest book, The Snowy Nap. I think it's coming out in October. And this was the not-to-be-missed thing for me for very nostalgic reasons. Jan Brett's books were some of my favorite picture books when I was just a wee little kiddo, a toddler learning to read. My favorite book of hers was Fritz and the Beautiful Horses, which I memorized the entire book before I could even begin to read it. And I just wore my copy to shreds by demanding that my mom read it to me over and over and over. I also had Comet's 9 Lives. I had her version of Beauty and the Beast, which is lovely. And I had a few other of her books as well. And so her art is just so deeply connected in my mind with my childhood. And these were the books that were just like right there with me when I was, you know, first falling in love with reading as a little kid. You can see what her art is like. A lot of her books have this thing where the art is sort of in a frame and you get these little framed pictures on the side showing what's happening with some of the other characters. You can see more of the art style on the back of the book here. She does animals a lot. This book is about a hedgehog who is getting sleepy to hibernate for the winter, but he would really, really like to stay awake to see winter. And so he tries not to fall asleep until this little girl finds him and brings him inside so he can see the winter from inside. And then when he finally falls asleep to hibernate, she brings him back out to his little den because he's a wild animal and that's where he belongs. And because this is a picture book, I just read it, you know, in the line for the next thing right after I got it. But meeting Jan Brett for this signing and getting to tell her in person how much her books mean to me was just super emotional. And she was just absolutely lovely, and this just makes me so happy. I am going to cherish and treasure this, even though, you know, I don't have a kid. This is just, you know, me as a grown-up having a new Jan Brett picture book. She's been very prolific since I was a kid. She, you know, keeps coming out with new books, and I have not stayed on top of what she's published since I was a child, and it's a lot. So the rest of these, I'm going to just go through in the order that I got them. The first of which was something that kind of came at me like a surprise. I was aware of this book. I was not in the front of my mind, but I was aware enough to think, okay, I'll give this a try. This is huge. This is not the final cover. It doesn't have the title on the cover, but this is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. As you can see, I'll put the final cover up here for a sec so you can see that's what it's going to look like. The reason I have some trepidation about this is because Samantha Shannon is the same author who did the Bone Season series, and I really didn't like the Bone Season when I read it back when that was her only book that was out. This seems really different though, and this is a standalone. I think one of the things that I didn't like about the Bone Season was the sense that it was going to be a really long series. It's going to be a 7-book series. And you can just tell that there's a lot of like mysteries in the world of that book that you were going to have to wait books and books and books to figure out what the heck was going on and why. And I just didn't have the patience for that, especially in a sort of dystopian paranormal like that book was. This, however, is 1, a standalone, and 2, a high fantasy. So this might actually be way more my thing. This is supposed to be the sort of thing that has dragons and queens and mages and stuff. What it says on the arc cover is a world divided, a queendom without an heir, an ancient enemy awakes. And it is massive. It is enormous. I feel like now we know why the Bone Season books have been getting released so slowly. This chunker has been in the works. Anyways, Samantha Shannon seems to be a really ambitious writer. To me, that was the redeeming quality of the Bone Season, that she just had so much it seemed like she wanted to do in that series. So I'm willing to give her another chance in a different subgenre. This is the arc that I picked up that is furthest from its publication date at this point. This isn't out until March 2019, so this is way in advance. Other basic info, this is from Bloomsbury, and I believe that as with the Bone Season series, this is marketed as adult. I know the Bone Season has, you know, massive YA crossover appeal. Most people who really, really like that series are mostly YA readers. I don't know if the same is going to be true for this or not. And I am realizing as I sit here filming this, the cover matches the color scheme of this hat phenomenally, so I'm feeling pleased with that. And then the second book that I picked up, I am really, really thrilled to have. This is a book I've had my eye on, and it is The Sisters of the Winter Wood by Rena Rosner. Rena Rosner is a literary agent, and this is her debut novel. This has an absolutely gorgeous cover, and this is the sort of thing that is being pushed for fans of books like The Bear and the Nightingale, that sort of historical fairy tale fantasy, which is so much my thing. I saw her talk on a panel that I will touch briefly upon later, and she described this as being a sort of Goblin Market retelling, or at least inspired by Christina Rossetti's Goblin Market poem. So it's about two sisters, but this is also about Jewish history and therefore has some Jewish fairy tale elements woven in as well. The release date on this is September 25th. It is from Red Hook, which is an imprint of Orbit that I was previously unaware of. And this is one of the books that was a signing, so I have a signed copy, and it's lovely. I actually don't know if this is a standalone or if it's going to be part of a series. At this point, it looks like a standalone. Moving on to the arcs that I picked up on Friday afternoon, the first was one that I wasn't planning on trying to get on Friday. They were just sort of shoving it at people walking by, and I was like, oh yes, I was actually turned down for this on NetGalley. I am happy to have this, thank you. This is Mirage by Somaiya Dowd. It comes out from Flatiron Books in August. As an August book, this is the soonest release of any of the books I picked up at BookExpo, so I might actually be getting to this first, if I'm being responsible and trying to read them in the order of their publication dates. That would be good of me if I managed that. This is the first in a series. It is YA science fiction, or maybe more accurately science fantasy or space fantasy, and it is inspired by Moroccan culture. I think the premise of this is that it's about a girl who gets dragged into being the body double for an evil princess, and I imagine it's going to be a super quick read because it's not that long. It's only around 300 pages, and it's decently large YA type text, not a whole ton of text per page. And I think this is also a debut novel. The next book I have here is another YA series starter that I was sort of scheming to get my hands on. I lined up for the signing for this one. And this is For a Muse of Fire by Heidi Heilig. Now, this is the same author who wrote The Girl from Everywhere and Ship Beyond Time duology, which has gotten some really strong reviews, but I decided I would pass on that series because time travel is not so much my thing. But this looks really, really interesting to me. From what I understand about this, it's inspired by Southeast Asian history and specifically by French colonialism of that part of the world. And what particularly intrigued me is that it involves shadow puppetry. And magical shadow puppetry, various forms of shadow puppetry being common in Asian and Southeast Asian countries. So as a theater and performance history nerd, that jumped out at me. The title of this book jumps out to me because it comes from Shakespeare. It's the famous prologue of Henry V, Oh, for a Muse of Fire that would ascend the brightest heaven of invention. So I'm expecting that it's going to be very sort of theater and performance focused, so that is definitely a draw for me. I think the author has also said that this deals with bipolar disorder and that that's Own Voices representation. Again, this was a signing, and there is a cool bookmark that came with. This is a September release, and it is from Green Willow, which is apparently a HarperCollins imprint. I really don't pay attention to YA publishers, so I am constantly surprised by who publishes what YA books. The next things I have here are two Tor.com novellas that were a joint ARC giveaway, one line for both novellas, and they are both things that I really wanted. The first is this. This is Finding Baba Yaga by Jane Yolen. Now this is subtitled A Short Novel in Verse, and it is written in poetry. I'm not sure what it's about other than it is obviously taking some inspiration from fairy tales and Baba Yaga. And part of why I'm really interested in this is because I haven't read anything that Jane Yolen has written recently. She's considered one of these, absolute masters of the fairy tale genre. But everything I've read by her is older. I've read Briar Rose, and I've read some of her older short fiction, maybe one of her poems and one of her short stories. But I am really curious to see what this is and what she's doing now. On the back, it says they're planning to market this as YA, and so I'm assuming that this is about a teenage character. But obviously this is something very different from, you know, the mainstream of YA fantasy publishing. And this one is coming out on October 30th. And then the second of those Tor.com novellas is Exit Strategy by Martha Wells. This is the fourth and final book in the Murderbot Diaries. The first two are out already, and I've read the first two. The first is All Systems Red, and the second is Artificial Condition. The third book is Rogue Protocol, and that comes out in August, and this is out in October, and this will round out the series. So I am crossing my fingers that I get approved for Rogue Protocol on NetGalley, because I can't read this one until I have that third book. I got approved for Artificial Condition the day before its release, so, you know, that might happen. Regardless, I'll be able to read Rogue Protocol in August, and then I'll have this one ready to go right after. And then the last book I got on Friday evening of BookExpo, I did not think I was going to be able to get because of the timing of the Tor.com novella giveaway. I thought I wouldn't be able to make it after that to get into this line soon enough to get a book, but I did. I got a book. And this is Muse of Nightmares. I have it. You may know that I really love Strange the Dreamer. This is the sequel to Strange the Dreamer. It is a duology, so this is the end of the series. It's by Laini Taylor. And this is a highly anticipated book for me, but I wasn't gonna like fight the mad crowds for it if there were mad crowds. So I didn't like have my heart set on getting an ARC, but it happened, and I have it, and I am super excited. This comes out in October, I think, from Little Brown. And this one here was also a signing, so this is signed. So I was going to mention that Roya and I went to two panels, the first of which was a discussion about the state of science fiction and fantasy. I don't remember what the panel was actually called, but that was with N.K. Jemisin and Ann Leckie. But that was a really great panel. I've seen N.K. Jemisin at a lot of events around New York City before, but I'd never seen Ann Leckie speak at any event before. It made me more excited to read her books. I have Ancillary Justice, and I've had it for a long time, and I still haven't read it. I totally will, I promise. And then the other panel that was right after that one was also a panel that I obviously could not miss, and that was a panel on fairy tales in fiction, and that was the one that Rena Rossner was on, as well as Laini Taylor and also Naomi Novik. And it was really interesting to hear these three authors. Hold on just a sec, because I can briefly spoil my next book haul that I have to film by showing you all three of these at once. It was really interesting to hear all three of these authors talk about how fairy tales influence their work in sometimes similar and sometimes really different ways. So those two panels were just great, and then I just have a few extra things that, you know, I accumulated that aren't necessarily book things, but I have learned that apparently one of the things that happens if you're at BookExpo is that you acquire tote bags without even trying. The tote bags, they just appear. So the first tote bag that appeared for me is this one from Abrams Children's Books. This is the art on the other side. It says the questionnaires, read, question, think, and I do not know if this is a book or if this is something else that's being promoted on this tote bag that's the questionnaires. But hey, Abrams Children's Books, tote bag. The second tote bag that materialized for me unasked for was when I did the OwlCrate spin the wheel thing, where you spin their wheel and you get whatever like prize it lands on. And apparently whatever prize it lands on also comes with an OwlCrate tote. So I now have an OwlCrate tote. in case you live under a booktube rock, OwlCrate is a very popular YA subscription box service. You haven't seen them on my channel because I don't buy subscription boxes. They're not really my thing. But one of the really cool things about OwlCrate is they do work with a lot of small sort of indie retailers of bookish merchandise. And so that ties into the prize that I won with the Spin the Wheel, which is a candle from Novelly Yours. I will link them down below. It's a soy candle, and the theme of this is Levi and Kath, which is from a Rainbow Rowell book, and I think that book is Fangirl, and I have not read it, but this smells amazing. The scent is coffee, pumpkin, and chocolate. It's kind of brownish, and it smells unlike any candle I have ever smelled in my life. I've always sort of wondered, because I see all these bookish candles for sale online, are they actually worth ordering? I'm always a little worried about buying scented things online without being able to smell them first. But this is genuinely a much better smelling candle than any store-bought candle I have ever encountered. So I might be converted to buying online fan candles if this ends up burning as well as it smells unburnt. It's definitely a fall scent, but I might have to just try burning it here over the summer because I don't think I'm gonna be able to wait. I am genuinely so pleased about this because I've been like staring at bookish fan candles online thinking, oh, I wonder if these are actually as good as everyone says they are. I believe it now. Apparently they are as good as everyone says they are. And then the last tote and the very last thing I'm going to show you here came with the Jan Brett book. And this is immense, and it is gorgeous, and it is my new favorite tote bag. It's big and sturdy and covered in Jan Brett art, and I love it. This has obviously the art from the book cover on the front and the book title. And then on the other side, it has the book title again and a different piece of art. And this just makes me so happy. There's art down the sides of it too. It's just the prettiest tote bag I have ever owned. And this was such a bonus. So that was the wild ride through my BookExpo experience. As I said, I did not really do BookCon. I just did my, volunteer shifts for BookCon. It was madness. There were children everywhere. I love that children go to book events like BookCon. I have low tolerance for crowds and stuff, and I had a headache. I went home. There are a couple things that I maybe regret not being able to do during BookCon, but not really. I had as much book event as I could handle for BookExpo. I didn't need any more. Anyhow, I think that's all. If you want to talk to me about any of these things that I picked up, please leave a comment. Anyhow, I hope you're having a nice day. That is all. Bye for now.